This episode is sponsored by Squarespace. Thanks so much for Squarespace for supporting Gamebreaker. Squarespace is the all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create a professional website, blog, portfolio, and online store. For a free trial and 10% off your first purchase on new accounts. Go right now to squarespace.com and use offer code Gamebreaker6, the number 6. Do it. Do it. Do it now. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Unicorn Duck Shadow Puppet episode number 3 for June 10th, 2013. The day one of E3. It's officially kind of over, and we're here going to talk about some WildStar stuff. I think we just ditched the entire show to talk about E3, but we can't do it because we know we got some WildStar fans, as we are as well. I'm Gary again. You're watching Gamebreaker coming up on today. So WildStar is accessibly hardcore. The engine is made for the game, and can they do humor without pop culture? We'll see all that and more. But first, joining us as always, Mr. Farhan Siddiqui. How are you, sir?
Hello. See, my Twitter is still misspelled.
Oh my god, man! I just fail. I'm epic.
Way to go.
I'm an epic fail. I'm in just put me in the corner. Derp. Fail. It's 3 episodes now, but I have not. Yes. All right. No excuse. I suck. That's it. Pretty much done.
Right.
Filling in for Scott Hawks, who is here in LA, hung up with E3 stuff. Right here from After Dark, Mr. Mike Shaftnett. How are you, sir?
Good, how are you?
Excellent.
Ready to talk about some WildStar.
Yeah, good to have you on the show and kind of chat and see what it's about. Everybody wants to talk about E3. Our chat room is just blowing up. It's just like E3, Microsoft, PlayStation.
What's WildStar?
Well, really quick. I mean, just like, we just finished the PlayStation keynote, and they pretty much just knocked it out of the park, and everyone's going crazy. Elder Scrolls Online going to PS4. Nobody saw that coming. Destiny revealed crazy amount of stuff, but we will be talking, I'm sure, on After Dark tonight with Shaftnett and myself. We'll be talking a lot about E3. I'm sure a lot about E3. As well as we'll be doing a lot of footage from E3. So check Gamebreaker Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday for all of that footage. We'll be doing that all throughout the day. So we will be covering it extensively. So let's talk about some WildStar. Nothing so far yet. No breaking news from WildStar on E3 that I saw. I don't know if any of you've seen anything, but I haven't seen anything. I don't expect anything I don't really expect anything big from the WildStar camp at E3. Except that they have it playable. I know it's playable on the showroom floor, so we'll probably get to play it. But beyond that, I don't think it's gonna be a big reveal.
I think it's something that would probably be eclipsed with everything, all these monumental, big titles. I'm not necessarily saying WildStar isn't this big thing, but I think that they've got a lot of contenders to try and fight for attention for at E3, and it might do them a little bit to just kind of sit back, play silent, let people come in and play the game while they're in attendance, and maybe wait till the dust is settled to maybe bring out some more information.
Farhan, you were feeling almost like that. You were saying earlier in pre-show that you're really hoping for them to deliver something, or you feel like it might be a missed opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of feel like if you have that kind of platform all the journalists are going to be there to talk about. I think that not having something to sort of draw them in and make them want to write about you is sort of a missed opportunity. Just like some little tidbit, just so that all of the different articles want to put out something, just to get you on the page.
Yeah, no, I mean, you have a point. I mean, you are getting all the journalists all in one spot wanting to write stuff. And WildStar's been kind of riding this undercurrent since the beginning, right? Like they have not really done like this massive crazy market. I mean, the market, they've done marketing stuff, but I think like all the hype and the that's building amongst the MMO community, especially, is almost just naturally driven. And like part of it is just from some of their like trailers and stuff and the personality, that it's just like dripping with personality. But that's really like, and then the mechanics and the systems and stuff. But they haven't really done anything like really super big, like announced reveal at all.
How great is that though? I mean, we look at less than a year ago when there was so much hype surrounding Guild Wars 2, and that built itself into this monumentous snowball. Which I think did a lot of good press for the game leading up to it. But then, we kind of saw a lot of people fall off that bandwagon once the game came out and they got their hands on it and they saw it. This could actually play into WildStar's favor by having a very controlled snowball happen, where it just kind of slowly picks up people as it goes along, and maybe just makes it so that expectations are perfectly set when the game comes out, and kind of it's right there, and it has room to build because it has room to intrigue people and find more people that maybe didn't necessarily know it was out there.
It feels a bit like Rift did early on. Like I was following Rift for a really long time, even when it was called like Heroes of Talara, before it was even called Rift, and I was following and I was like, wow, this game looks interesting, and mostly because I knew who Scott Hartzman was and I knew he was behind it, so I was just kind of like, keeping an eye on it, but nobody was paying attention to it. Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, like all of a sudden this undercurrent was just like, where'd this game come from? And everybody got super excited. Do you guys feel the same way? Like I almost feel like that's like WildStar's hype building is very, very natural and almost organic.
Yeah, I think that they've said that they really didn't intend for the hype train to get rolling quite yet. Like when they were talking about beta numbers in terms of applicants, they said that their aim was to get like 20,000 applications or something like that, and they overshot that by 10 times, like right away.
Say, really?
So
20,000? They probably got like 2 million.
I think that they said that they started out with 200,000 like a week after closed beta actually started, and then a month later they had gone over 300,000. So
but that's great though, because Gary, I know you talk about MMOs that create a design around needing a specific smaller player base, and even though the public might look at an MMO that sits at 500,000 subscribers as a failure, if that's kind of what their expectation for beta requests were, and it far exceeded it, that's great. Maybe they're keeping their expectations for how the game is going to perform, and maybe understand that it's a slow burn kind of growth, and they're not going down this train of like trying to overhype it and get all this massive weight behind it.
It's really possible,
when it's not necessarily their model.
Yeah, it's really possible, especially if they only anticipated like 20,000 and they're really overshoot. That says that they maybe well, let's hope so. I don't know. All I know is the hype train is going. I know people are more and more excited week after week. So I'll say it has nothing to do with this show and everything to do with this show. So, all right. So Carbine producer Stephan Frost spoke to MCV this week, and he had a quote that I think the fans, if we weren't blowing smoke up their ass so far, well, I think this is going to help. I think fans are going to really like this. He said, "We're making something that's different. We're coming out at a time when WoW is losing subscribers, and we can fill the void for people who want an MMO that's deep, hardcore, but also accessible to people. We found through betas and trade shows that MMO players understand our game. They can see the improvements we've made and notice that this game is something pretty cool." What really stuck with me reading this is that this is not just like a throwaway quote for a headline, right? It's like it's really a message that's coming across. And it's like what we just talked about for the past 5 minutes of like the undercurrent of like a real core community of MMO gamers are really taking notice. I think that's why, right? They want to hear this. They want to hear that there's this like deep, hardcore game that they can kind of like progress on from. Like maybe, WoW is their first MMO and they're looking for something new. And I think that like WildStar is really looking to fill that void. And there is a void there for it, for sure.
I think it'll be interesting, especially because they say that they're trying to approach something that's hardcore yet accessible. And as we've spoken about on Legendary, that's a really big issue is that WoW is almost making it too accessible, and a lot of people are complaining it's taking away some of the hardcore elements. And if they can truly make something enjoyable for the everyman, but then keep it at a level that players find that hardcore value, that hardcore carrot that's going to keep them coming back and playing. It's going to be. I think it really could be that MMO that people have kind of wanted to rally behind.
I think that they said that, like, in terms of the demographic that they're trying to aim for in this game, like, they don't want to steal people away from the MMO that they love already, because they see, like, what's the point of that? That's going to be way too hard. But what they want to do is they want to go for the people that are already sort of looking for the next thing. Like, I think that Jeremy Gaffney had, like, a quote where he sort of said something like, you know, if you think about the people that you know who play WoW, and this might not be true for the viewers of this show necessarily, but if you think about it, like, you probably know a handful of people who play WoW right now, and then a lot more people who used to play WoW and don't right now anymore. And
I'm gonna say that that's probably most people watching this show right now, to be honest. Think about it. Right? I mean, I'm sure almost everyone in chat room played.
The figure he gave was like 10 times more people who don't play WoW now, who used to play WoW. And I don't know if that's necessarily true, but I mean, I guess he's a producer. He knows all the statistics on exactly what churn rates are and all that kind of stuff. So he was talking about how it just makes much more business sense to try to go for the players who aren't currently. But you're not trying to steal their players. You're trying to get the ones who already sort of moved on.
Because it's extremely hard to pry somebody away from a game that they're actually invested in, right? It's much easier to kind of go after and target a gamer who is actively looking for a game, like they're looking to fill that void. So, I mean, I think with your story, I think a lot of people who are watching this show, in particular, have played World of Warcraft at one time or another. And sure. I don't know, Farin, tell me what you think, but I think WildStar is doing a really good job of playing into a lot of the things that they may have really liked about that old school WoW fan, especially, 40-man raids, add-ons, the Trinity, like a lot of things that other games have kind of like fallen out a little bit of fashion. Like they're going back to that aspect of what you sort of remember with vanilla WoW and what made you really enjoy that game. Do you think that's a big factor of what's like building that hype?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think, like, if you look at the way that WoW sort of has evolved over the years through the expansions, I feel like they've more and more they started out in this one central spot of maybe where MMOs are in terms of accessibility, and they sort of moved over towards making things more and more accessible. They want to make all their content accessible to everyone. Just over time, they're doing that, and I don't mean like a heroic mode versus a non-heroic mode. I mean, like, they get to see the boss, at least they get to see the arc. Mm-hmm. In terms of that, they want to make it more accessible, whereas I feel like WildStar is going back to that central point where WoW might have been a few expansions ago, and is sort of moving from that point again. And I feel like that's pretty interesting.
What do you think? Side note, if you guys, I got to go on a side note and to ask you guys about what you guys think about 40-man raiding. I mean, seriously, what? Well, I mean, I'm sure, I don't know if both of you guys have heard, but have you guys heard about New World of Warcraft's big announcement last week was the flex rating system, where, it kind of, you can pull people in and they're going to have 15 or 16 or 17 or how many people you have, you can jump into the raid and do it. And it's going to flex all the numbers for you. I don't know. What are your thoughts on 40-man raiding? Do you think that they might actually do something like a flex system like this? Because 40 that's incredibly hardcore.
40 is not only hardcore, it's an incredibly hard number to hit. 40-man raids stopped being a thing right around the time that I started playing WoW, so I didn't ever have to deal with the headache. But the guild that I joined and the friends that I had that got me to start playing just had horror stories of waiting for 2 or 3 hours for everybody to get on, and one person leaves, and then you're in a huge bind because you don't have enough. It's so tough because that's kind of that word that they used of still being hardcore, and if that's maybe that understanding, that's the line that they're going to walk. Like, yeah, guess what? This raid that we're making isn't for everybody. You don't all get to see it. I know Blizzard's saying that you do, but we're saying that you don't. So if you don't have 40 people, go do something else. That's a pretty hardcore mindset. And I think that there were people that played that way. There were a lot of people that enjoyed that element of secrecy behind the raids of WoW. You know, I look at being one of the first guilds to be in Black Temple on my server, and there was a lot of prestige to that because a lot of the server didn't see it. So if they can embrace this and keep it that way and make it so that 40-man raids are true and hard enough, but it's so tough because you got to make them accessible. Like,
well, that's
do we
the
really
question.
have do we
so
really have
is,
39 friends that get together at the same time nowadays?
That is incredible. You need such a healthy base and such a large guild to actually make that happen. That's why I almost wondered, do you guys think that they're going to do something along the lines of a flex rating system where they say like, hey, we will have 40-man raids, but maybe there's some sort of same system where, you know, the same raid, you know, 25 is going to work, 20 is going to work, but we go up to 40.
But do you think that this is, I mean, you said that takes an incredibly robust guild but do you think that maybe contributed to the level of social interaction that existed with, say, World of Warcraft or early MMOs? And now as games embrace the idea of making it more convenient for less people, we lose that social interaction, thus we lose the social connection, thus we don't play for longer. So that could be a big thing, whereas if they keep it in, maybe it will force people to start making 39 friends and really bring a social aspect to the game that isn't unparalleled to any other, but a lot of other games have let go of that.
I don't know. Maybe. Go ahead, Farin.
I sort of doubt that they would actually use something quite like the flex system, just because I think Ghostcrawler even said something along the lines of flex rating isn't a min-max thing. And I feel like they want it to be a hardcore min-max experience for WildStar for rating. Logistically, it is really difficult. Like I was an officer in a guild back in the 40-man days, and just managing everyone was definitely one of the hardest things. Just getting everyone in place, you know, knowing okay, this is what we're supposed to do. But I do think that.
I mean, you must have wanted to like pull your hair at times, because I was never part of a 40-man guild, but I was in a guild who raided at that level, and I didn't participate with them. I just played casually with them. But I just remember the guild leader literally like just wanting to like just jump off a bridge at some point, because it was so much work. It was like having a full-time job on top of a full-time job. There was so much pressure and so much work to make that stuff happen and then keep all those people happy and coordinate it. It was like a nightmare. And I remember watching him lead this guild and just be like, dude, I never want to run a guild. Like ever. Because that was like, it's a logistical nightmare.
It was definitely difficult. And I think probably the source of a lot of problems that I didn't see in later expansions in WoW. I know that like they'd still be present, but like things like being we were one of those guilds that we were doing pretty well, but we weren't at the top end of our server. And so what would happen would be that we'd have players coming into our guild, getting geared up, and then just graduating on to the next.
That's what everyone did. We're talking about like the same time period, I think.
And you were just sort of stuck in that because of the way that you needed 40 people who were all there. And so people would just sort of, you know, associate and sort of think that, okay, well, it's because of the guild that we're not progressing, and not just that, okay, we don't have all 40 quite ready yet, and then we'll progress on to the next thing. And so then we just have this churn, we have to deal with that. So I am wary about the logistics, but, you know, I don't think that they're going to do a flex thing. I just don't know how they're going to handle that.
I mean, part of me definitely wants to applaud them and just say like, hey, we're going to do some hardcore 40-man raiding, and you guys just got to get it together. And like you said, Mike, hey, if you can't, not everyone will see all the content. I like that attitude. Believe me, I really absolutely do. It's interesting. It's a ballsy move, I think, in 2013 to put out an MMO, because it definitely goes against like what a lot of players are used to hearing these days from MMO companies, which could be a really good thing right now.
But that could also go back to the idea of what their expectation was for beta invites, and their model is maybe they're trying to build something that doesn't need a high player base to be sustained, so that lower number of interested people who actually enjoy that keeps this sustained and going, and it is something that doesn't need the millions upon millions of people playing it like most MMO models right now are embracing.
I think that they do. I think that it's just a matter of like they didn't quite start the hype train yet, so they were happily surprised that it got off the boat. But I do think that they are going to want to get to that point, because I mean, like, just logistically think about it. if you have 40 man, like Gary was just saying, you need a really healthy player base in order to actually fill those guilds. Yeah, you really need a lot of players in order to do it. I think that what WildStar is going to have to do in the next little while is they're going to need to really show off all the content for people who aren't going to be participating in those 40-man raids, and they need to like make a really strong case for it being like something that they can feel progression in outside of doing those 40-man raids. Otherwise, it's going to be a little bit iffy.
Well, again, let's get back on track what we were talking about before, right? So, other things that WildStar are talking about: more in-depth crafting than we've seen, and gathering, more in-depth gathering system, player housing, a return to a more social experience. These are all things that I feel like old school World of Warcraft players have complained about, right?
You mean that they wanted?
Yes, they've been complaining that they actually want, that they miss these things. These are things that they feel like, you know, they're looking for that they're not really getting over there. They're tapping in. I mean,
yeah, I think they're really trying to target, and that's again, like this is why it's so interesting, and this is why it's something that's really on my radar. Is it really looks like it's something that they're focusing on a small group of people interested by this idea, and maybe this isn't the case, but the way this kind of keeps playing out is it really feels like they're simply saying, you know what, we're going to create a game for the hardcore, and we're going to keep it at hardcore for those people, and we'll also make other areas accessible. But these two worlds, maybe they're not going to mix, but that doesn't matter, because we're going to make sure that we're giving the features to players that they've been saying that they've wanted for years, and for whatever reason, in whatever MMO, they just haven't received it.
I mean, if we really start looking even at more some of the things that we've looked at on paper, you know, more action combat than tab targeting, the telegraph system, right? Really new, dodging, modern sort of mechanic, for the MMO genre to some extent, double jump, right? Got double jump. That's, you know, not like we haven't seen it, but still taunts in PvP. So like on paper, WildStar just seems like a really great blend of the old and new with a good amount of innovation.
You know, they say that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. It sure sounds like they're teaching an old dog new tricks. And keeping it nice and nostalgic, but nice and fresh by adding in a lot of the innovations that we've seen over the years, and even some that we haven't. It's really exciting. I truly think that this is going to be it's going to be one of those slow snowballs. It might not get a lot of weight behind it, but the more people get in and play it, they're gonna really be blown away by it from the quality that they're seeing inside the game, and really jump in and get back to that good old MMO feel.
And I mean, right now, all we have to judge everything on is basically from paper and quotes and things like that. But I have to say, the more that the devs actually get out there and start speaking and talking about their game, a lot of their quotes and a lot of their statements actually make a lot of sense. And I think a lot of people are looking at them going, like, it's kind of refreshing. They do seem like they're very on point. Going back to that quote, one line might strike people as maybe funny. Deep, hardcore, but also accessible.
Deep and hardcore.
I wasn't going there. But is it possible? How can they pull that off? How can you pull off a really deep, because when you to an MMO player, and of course these are like all these words are kind of off from the perception of whoever's kind of putting them in context, right? But when you say deep and hardcore, like, I don't know, my brain immediately goes to something like EVE Online or something, right? And but it's accessible, and it's like, well, I remember when I first started playing EVE Online, and the tutorial was like 15 hours. Like, that doesn't sound accessible. So it's like, I don't know, Farin, do you think that they could actually pull it off? Is it possible to like find that balance?
I think if they go with the route where they try to make a lot of different little tiny niches for players to get into, they can make each niche really deep and sort of make successive niches be increasingly accessible. So like you have like content for the casual player in housing, and I mean everyone's going to be interested in housing, I think, but especially, you know, for them, they're going to really want to get into that and solo gameplay and sort of have this progression. I think that they could actually get to the point where they have deep gameplay.
I mean, look at the Sorry, go ahead.
I just I don't know if it'll be all hardcore and accessible at the same time. I just think that they want deep hardcore and they're going to want deep accessible.
But look at their paths. I think I forget which one. The one that where you can actually like set up a shop and be a seller or a settler or I forget what it's called, but a settler. Yeah, like you can build things to sell to other people, and I think that's maybe where the accessible but still hardcore comes into aspect, because it's accessible to a person who wants to maybe just set up and do it. And take it for face value and not really get into the nitty-gritty. But it might go to the level of being hardcore that someone could literally take the time to just make that game about getting on the game and being a tradesman. And that's all they're doing. And that's the way they're playing the game, because they're taking it to such a hardcore level. Look at Explorer. There might be, there's fun, easy, accessible Explorer paths to go do, but then there's some really difficult, really tough things that you got to figure out really weird ways to jump that makes it hardcore. And maybe that's the difference here, is it's just that it's accessible on face value, but it goes deep enough that it's really difficult, that's actually going to require some skill for someone to finish the completion of it. They're not just going to throw like, oh, you're an explorer, we'll just spend the next 5 hours, working towards your explorer, and you're going to see it all. No, you have to work for it if you really want to see all the explorer path has to offer.
You know what else is really interesting about the messaging that's coming across from the Carbine team is that we've basically got the two big MMOs that we're looking forward to in 2013, right? Elder Scrolls Online and WildStar. And what's really interesting, we've been talking a lot, we don't have an Elder Scrolls Online show yet, but we've been talking about it a lot on This Week in MMO. You should go watch This Week in MMO, the last one, because we had a really long conversation about some of the statements that they've been making, about how one of the actual statements was, I'm paraphrasing slightly, I can't remember it exactly, but it's something to the effect of, the game is more multiplayer than an MMO, and that all of a sudden a lot of people were just like, whoa, what are you saying? It's not an MMO. Now today we see that, hey, Elder Scrolls Online is going to be coming out for the PlayStation 4 in 2014. It definitely feels, from our perspective of the MMO player base, that like they're definitely targeting the non-MMO player crowd a little bit more than we are. They're afraid to call it an MMO. They're coming out on a console. What makes sense? They're coming out on a console. Like, if it sounds like they're definitely trying to talk to the Skyrim player and say like, hey guys, you really should try this game. It's like the next.
They have
it's really
to,
interesting.
though.
But what's really interesting, and it's perfect timing, right? Because you got the two big ones that got to fight each other, WildStar and Elder Scrolls Online. The things that the devs have been saying from Carbine is that they actually want to make the 1% happy. Like, they're talking to the people on this show, which are the 1%, the smallest sliver of their player base. And they're like, we want to make actually that 1% happy, because they understand the ramifications of what that 1% can do and the trickle down effect of how it permeates throughout the rest of the community. That's really interesting. And I think that they're really getting it right, that they're catering to that crowd, because not a lot of MMO companies do. I think they go, that's just 1%. We really got to pay attention to the rest of them. And that 1% gets pissed off, and then all of a sudden yells, and then the rest of the other 95% realizes that what they're saying is true, and they all bail, and then they don't have a player base anymore.
Think about that from a World of Warcraft perspective. There were a lot of people that didn't see Black Temple and Molten Core, Encourage, Next Ramus when it was relevant, but they heard from players that it was some of the best rating content they've ever seen. It was so much fun, and it was amazing. You should have seen it in all its glory, and it really bolstered a positive attitude. Now that we're getting that 1% leaving because the rating isn't good enough, or you're giving accessibility to the people who maybe don't value it as much, they're starting to now have a negative attitude towards it. Or not completely negative, but maybe their outlook on it isn't as positive as it could be if it wasn't for that 1% going, holy cow, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And I think you're definitely right. That 1% is small in terms of your player base.
They
can
are
be
loud.
So influential to the attitude.
They are loud. We are a loud bunch. We're a bunch of asshats, and we're loud, and we love the forums and shows.
Yes.
Now, the flip side of that, right? Like, this piggybacking off of what you just said before, Stephan, about like the path system and stuff. Then you go on the casual side of WildStar, the path system, multiple zone options while leveling that they're talking about, the housing system, right? Bolstering. the looking for group, for dungeons, PvP, and war plots, all things that casuals, and I'm in there, believe me, so I'm not saying it in a negative connotation whatsoever, kind of really care about. Like, those are the people who don't concentrate on the super hardcore end game. That's the stuff they care about. That's actually the stuff I'm extremely excited about. I'm not going to be in some super hardcore raiding guild. There's no way. All this other stuff like sounds awesome to me. Exploring the housing thing, especially how they're talking about housing being actually useful, where you can mine stuff and unearth like dungeons or caves and things like that. I don't know. I think so. I don't know. I think they're really speaking to like two different parts of the demographic. Now, I guess the fear would be is like, do they have this game that feels really split down the middle? And how do those players sort of, is there enough dependency amongst players where the hardcore need the casuals to some extent, the casuals maybe need the hardcores to some extent, and we kind of like actually play together on some level, whether it's with crafting and gathering or things like that? Do we end up really creating that social experience that an MMO should be, or is there this great divide?
What's the negative connotation to having a divide in your game like that, as long as the two parties are getting the fulfillment and enjoyment out of their content?
I mean, I guess it is an MMO.
But that's what really people said World of Warcraft was for the longest time.
But I have played MMOs where I've seen this sort of really nice mixture between it. And it's been a really long time since I've seen that. SWG, everybody drink. But there were people on that, like you said, like there were people on that game who were like just dedicated people who sold stuff. And like, that's all they did. And you could consider that casual, but they were hardcore because that's all that they did. And they made sure they were on every day and taking orders and making stuff and selling it. So in their sense of the gameplay, they were hardcore. But at the same time, they weren't doing all the other content. Like they weren't doing what would be considered the hardcore content. Yet they played every day. It's just they played differently. But they had a dependency on each. But they had a dependency on each other, and they actually like they spoke to each other and they mixed, and that's what I think is important.
What if you were to make the settler stuff in order to sit there and be a high level tradesman? You need the hardcore raiders need the high level tradesmen to be able to craft the items, and the tradesman needs the hardcore raider in order to go get the pieces to make and forge for them. I mean, yes, I think there's the issue is as we've grown as MMO players, we feel entitled that we have to do everything. We have to be completely self-sufficient. If I'm going to hardcore raid and get all these items, I'm going to have to raise a high-level settler in order to sell or craft the items. However, the system is going to work. But you could easily just make them codependent on each other, I think, in that level, to force them to interact, kind of like, again, the way that it used to be in World of Warcraft.
Farhan, what do you think about all this? Where do you sit? Like, you're probably going to run a hardcore raiding guild, I imagine, and probably PvP a decent amount. I don't know. Do you want a guild that's sort of built up of hardcore players and also possibly more casual players that you actually depend on for certain things?
Yeah, I don't think that I would have a problem with having other players provide me with materials or people that I would need to go to in order to like sort of give them things and interact with them in order to actually get stuff that I want to get done. Just because like what the MMO that I played the most, like in terms of just game time, was Vanilla and Burning Crusade. WoW. Like I cut down on my MMO time a lot after that, just because I guess partly because I didn't really need to play as much afterward, but also just because I felt like the social engagement that I had with my guild back then was just so much higher. Just there were like your alchemists, and you had to.
You needed people.
Yeah, you definitely needed.
I guess my question: do you think that the game needs to strike a balance where possibly the hardcore and the casuals like play together, or do you think it's okay? Like Mike is sort of saying, like that there might even be this divide amongst how players play. Do you think that's okay?
I think it's almost inevitable that the players are going to end up playing in a different way. I don't really see a problem with having everyone sort of end up in their gameplay niche. Actually, that's what I'm looking forward to the most in WildStar. Like, I mean, we'll see exactly where it ends up. But if WildStar ends up being a game where I get to play content that is really the content that I want to play the most, and for example, one of my friends, he's pretty casual. If he could get in there and have content that he really wants to play, then we still have something to talk about. We still have something that links us together. We're both playing this game. We're both experiencing things in this world. I think that would make me really happy, just because I feel like content gets watered down when you try to make it appealing to everyone, and it ends up just like you can't really please everyone anyway. So why not just make each niche have something that's really, really wonderful for them?
No, I agree. I agree with that completely. I agree that when you try and make an MMO, especially like for everyone, that's when it just becomes really bland and boring. So I agree with that. I guess, let's move on. Let's talk about, have we talked about, I don't even remember. Have we talked about business models yet on this show? I don't even know.
A little bit on the first one.
What do you guys think? I mean, I think it's going to be a huge factor for WildStar as well. We have absolutely no idea. Carbine hasn't said a word about this yet, so we do not know what they're going to do. But what's your speculation? Free to play, buy to play, subscription, hybrid, all of the above. Shaftnit, you're the new guy. I know you're not like following this like super hardcore, but you know the state of this, the landscape pretty well. So where do you think they would go?
I think buy to play is not off the table, and not unsuccessful, but I don't think Guild Wars is seeing the same kind of success that maybe they had originally hoped. So I would look at them looking more at a free-to-play or subscription-based setup. I would lean towards them doing subscription because they seem to be embracing the old way of things by creating that hardcore environment. And honestly, I think if they can encapsulate that the way that we're kind of talking about it, right now the MMO player is very much over the idea of paying for a subscription. But I think you might be able to recapture that attitude if you recapture the elements of the game that they really enjoyed, because I feel like that's maybe why subscriptions are dropping, is people aren't necessarily feeling like it's the same game that they were willing to pay a monthly subscription for. So it may have potential to come back as a sub game if they want to go down that road and embrace that idea. Other than that, I would say if they're not going to go down that road, then I think that they will probably keep it free to play.
What do you think, Farhan?
I think that there's a little bit of chat, a little bit of the chat room are saying that maybe the subscription fee, but have it be a little bit lower or something like that, or at least that's something that they would like. Again, I quote Jeremy Gaffney a lot because he has a lot of really neat insight that he's posted on. I think this was specifically on Reddit, on maybe on the AMA or something that was a while back. But basically what he said was that if you do a subscription, then you want it to be $15 because it's like the sweet spot where you, like maybe if you lower your subscription from 15 to 10, then you're really cutting into your profits really heavily, enough that because it's just like, your costs are going to be pretty static. The gain in numbers that doesn't quite follow, and if you increase the subscription fee much more than 15, then the gain from that isn't quite as good either.
So you're leaning towards some sort of hybrid model?
I think that it would be a $15 sub and then an option of doing some free-to-play stuff with. So maybe I think something similar to the way that Star Wars is doing things, except less, restrictive.
I kind of agree with that. I think that's sort of. I think you're right. I know when you say Star Wars around here, and that might be them fighting words, especially when it comes to that grid. I don't think the grid is gonna look like that when it comes to like, this is what you get as free to play, this is what you get as subscriber. But I do think that I kind of leaning towards the same thing. I think they're gonna have a free to play model and a sub model, but I don't know. They seem to have their act together to kind of get that grid right, where I think SWTOR kind of fell short a little bit. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see if we hear. I don't see us hearing anything out of E3 on subscription model. I seriously doubt it, unless that could be their big reveal, which could be enough if they just announced that. But it feels like that would be still too early for that. I don't know. I want to talk about this interview here with Matt Mocarski, but first I want to tell you guys about Audible. That's right, audible.com/gamebreaker. You want to go over, use that URL. You got to use that URL. And I want you to try Audible free, absolutely free for 30 days, no obligations. And you're also going to get a free book just by using the URL. So just go to audible.com/gamebreaker, sign up, make an account. If you guys haven't checked it out, it's you don't even know what Audible is. Maybe you don't. Maybe some people out there don't. I guess I don't even talk about it. So it's audiobooks on your iOS device, your Android device, whatever you got. You put the app on your phone and you download audiobooks and you listen to them in your car, whenever you're working out, whatever. I listen to them in my car all the time, driving around, going to sleep, sometimes working out, not so much working out though. But actually this one here, we were looking at some of the Star Wars books, tons of Star Wars books on there. I'm sure even WildStar fans are fans of Star Wars. Who's not a fan of Star Wars? Tons of good Star Wars books on here. Some World of Warcraft books. There's like Dragons books. Fantasy nerds like us, seriously, there is so much good stuff on Audible for us fantasy and sci-fi nerds. Forget it. There's just tons. And if you use that URL, audible.com/gamebreaker, you get a free book. So basically just sign up, download the app, get free for 30 days, download a book tonight, start listening to some Star Wars or Snow Crash, maybe Game of Thrones, whatever your nerdy heart desires. It's probably there on Audible. Go check it out. Check it out today. And I'm super happy to have Audible on as one of our sponsors. I've been a long time subscriber to Audible. Polycount spoke with WildStar's creative director, Matt Mocarski. I think I'm getting that right. Mocarski, something like that. I don't know. Sorry if I butchered your name. Lots of interesting info about the art and the graphic side in this one. Definitely worth checking out this interview in its full, but of course we pull out the best bits and kind of talk about them right here. First, he had this to say. He said, Carbine was founded by a group of around 20 people who worked on the original World of Warcraft team. Shocker. Hence the vanilla World of Warcraft stuff we're talking about. All the good bits. It was mostly seniors and leads. After shipping WoW, a bunch of us were asking, what's next? Creatively, we were looking for something new. It's not news that Carbine was founded by World of Warcraft, a bunch of the senior World of Warcraft, old school team there. That's been known for a while. I'm sure a lot of fans who haven't been following WildStar possibly don't know that. Wanted to kind of point that out. But let's be honest, in the MMO space, you couldn't really ask for a better core group of people, right? Most people probably watching the show, like I said, I think have played WoW at some time and look back to some of that vanilla WoW stuff and go like, man, that stuff was awesome. I want some of that stuff. And you've got a group of 20 people mostly from that space building WildStar. Builds the confidence just a little bit. And going back to our previous topic with, I don't know, do you think that they're actually focusing and sort of targeting disgruntled WoW players to some extent? I mean, it makes sense.
Wasn't it? Didn't they say? Yeah, I mean, in the first quote that you're talking about, they specifically target the idea that in a time where World of Warcraft is losing subscribers, so it's very clear they're aware of the trend of people leaving WoW. I wouldn't think it's and that's not a trend that has just started to happen. It's been happening for a while, so I'm sure that they've been looking at that trend and thinking, okay, how can we? Why are these people leaving? These people we love MMOs. People don't just stop loving MMOs; they stop loving what the content is being provided and the way that the game has evolved and changed. So maybe they looked at that from the very first bit and were just like, you know what, we're gonna the immediate target of our audience is the unsubscribing disgruntled World of Warcraft player, and then we'll move on from there.
And they probably know, hey, like you said, we're not trying to grab the 10 million players still playing WoW. But there's got to be a million of you out there who played and now are not playing, who are looking for something. There's got to be a million. And maybe that's all we need, 1 million subscribers, and they're probably in really good shape. Next up, Matt said, he talked a little bit about the game engine. He said, our engine and tools are all proprietary for MMOs. There aren't any great go-to engines out there. These are huge, seamless, persistent worlds with thousands of players running around. I imagine it would be difficult to market an engine that could do that and everything needed for an FPS, frames per second, and action/adventure game. So the best thing about our engine is that it's first and foremost designed for a large-scale MMO. I mean, I'll play devil's advocate and say, again, we can't all get super excited about this. We haven't played the game yet, so we hope their code is really super solid and can handle everything. Feels like a slight little dig at Star Wars, doesn't it? Doesn't it? Just a little bit?
Pretty much.
I mean, for people in the know, right? Like if they're talking to the 1% and that's what they're making happy, they know that 1% talk about this all the time because they also know there's a lot of people who left that game. So it's like, I feel like they're like really strategically like talking to those people in like really subtle ways. They're like, we're not saying
Why not
this.
though?
No, it's perfect. It's perfect.
It's such a great idea, especially because we get so many. Again, Star Wars was one of those games. Guild Wars was one of those games. It gets so much hype built. This would be the ultimate irony. If Star Wars, Guild Wars, World of Warcraft are games that have all this hype around them. And WildStar, the one that doesn't, is the one that analyzes the faults or the reason why some people are leaving, embraces those ideas and creates a game out of those complaints and becomes the one that's more successful than all of them. I think that'd be an absolutely hilarious tale of irony and a great success story.
I see this question in chat and one person's asking, so I'm going to explain it because I'm thinking there may be more of you. If I see one person, sometimes I try and grab these questions. Somebody's asking, like, as long as it says, somebody made a comment saying, as long as it's not the hero engine. And that I think is slightly the dig right now that we all see is that is what, that the hero engine is what Star Wars The Old Republic was built on. It gets a lot of flack and a lot of gamers attribute a lot of the issues that Star Wars has with that engine. So I think that that's sort of what we're thinking that's sort of geared at the people who are in the know and kind of even talk about engines. Right. And gamers who talk about game engines are the 1%. Like, you know,
they're the 1% of the 1%.
Yeah. Yeah. Like we're deep down the rabbit hole right now talking about the hero freaking engine. Like what?
2 layers deep. We're Inception level deep at this point.
Holy nerddom. Like if you know what that is. I don't even think we realize that sometimes, but if that's the truth, it's like, but performance is such a huge factor in the game. I mean, lag, ability delay. I mean, that's one thing, again, that World of Warcraft did so well. And just, it was like, it just immediately gives a bad impression. I mean, none of us have played it. So we don't know. Hopefully I'm going to get to play it at E3. This is actually going to be, so this is one of my goals if I get to play it at E3, which I'm hoping to. I really want to try. It's really hard to focus at a convention when you're playing something and really hone in and be like, was this a really good experience? Like there's so much going on. There's like blaring music and there's lights flashing and there's people waiting and there's like, it's insane. And then you get back from a convention and people are like, how was the GCD? How was the, was there any lag? And you're like, it's like mind breaks. But this is something, and Schaffner, remind me this when we're there, because I really want to try and pay attention to this somewhat and really feel like, how does the engine feel at that level? Because I think that it's super important, like performance and just the tactical feel of it. And I mean, for you as a PvPer, isn't that like one of the most important things that like when you do something, your character responds? Yeah, like I think that has been the thing that PvPers complain about the most, right after one of like the recent MMOs have happened, like Star Wars. That was like a huge thing, the animation delay that people would complain about. That they push the button, they want it to go off right then, and WoW was amazing for doing that. They're just getting that kind of feedback immediately, and yeah, WoW was amazing for having that kind of feedback, and you really felt like you were actually like, when you push the button, that instant cast happened right then, or you sort of had that channel going off. And I think that WildStar has a lot of potential for that because of that movement video that they put out was just, they're really putting a lot of attention to animation, and I think that at least as far as the art goes, that's the thing that excites me the most about WildStar is their animation. I feel like they have such high quality animators from the stuff that we've seen, that I'm really looking forward to seeing and really telling if the gameplay actually does feel a lot tighter than the past few MMOs have felt. It has to be that tight, and I forget when it was. I think it was for a BlizzCon interview a few years back, and I think that they were talking to Rob Pardo, and he actually went into like a whole segment where he like really got, I don't want to say passionate, but he really talked about actually that aspect of how fanatical he was with how responsive World of Warcraft would be. And they would do like build to build, and maybe he's blowing smoke, but maybe he really felt it. But he was sort of saying like, build to build, he would feel this slightest change to something, and he'd be like, there's something wrong, go back and check it. And they'd be like, we checked all the code, it's exactly the same, it's fine. He'd be like, no, I'm telling you, there's something. They'd go back, and he was fanatical about the latency and the lag just being absolutely reduced to an absolute minimum, so it literally felt like you were part of that character, and he felt that that was such a super important thing to be that connected to the world, and it paid off in the end. And then he joked and said that, they'd come back and be like, we found this one piece of code and it made one frame, more like of lag, like a frame or something ridiculous like that, where it's like so minute that you don't think anybody would ever feel it, but the brain can feel it, so it's super important. What do you guys think? This was something I actually didn't know this. I didn't know this, but now there's these screenshots. There's a day-night cycle in WildStar. But I'll be honest, when I first
cycle,
I don't know. I doubt it's real time. It's probably an exaggerated, condensed version, I would imagine. But I'll be honest, when I first saw WildStar, I wasn't completely so sure about the art style. I don't know. What do you guys feel about the highly stylized? I mean, it's more sci-fi, but we keep talking about World of Warcraft in this episode. It's like definitely a running theme, but hey, it's definitely, since World of Warcraft, it feels a bit like that, doesn't it?
Yes.
How do you guys feel
I
about
love
that?
this highly stylized look that they got. I think, especially, I like that they have like sort of the Western space spin on it. It really just it appeals to me in particular. As far as day-night cycle goes, I think that like it's something that I've actually been missing in MMOs, and I didn't realize that I was missing it until I went back to WoW recently, and I was like, oh, it looks different now than it used to. So I'm really hoping that it actually is more of a real-time thing, because I was sort of like the immersion of feeling like now it's actually dark in real life, and it's a little bit darker in the game. I have to say a little bit darker.
I'm an old crotchety MMOer. I gotta say, like those night cycles are too bright for me. Make that shit dark. Make it dark. I want some imagination.
It doesn't impact. Like what's the point of a day? First off, what's the point of a day-night cycle if there is no difference from the day to the night? But the second part is, unless you directly point your camera at the sky and notice that there are stars and a moon out, you don't necessarily realize that there is a night cycle going on. Now, I don't think you have to go to the level of day Z, turn off all the lights.
Yes, you do. Do it. Turn it off. You need flares. Friendly at the tracks. Just blow a flare, not me. I love it.
But I don't know. Like my thing with this art style, I've never been one of those crotchety gamers that is just completely sold on the fact that it has to look realistic and can't get over something being cartoony. I think that by staying in this kind of artistic style, it helps future-proof it a little bit. You're not looking at the game 2 years down the road and going, man, these graphics are awful, because it's grounded itself in its art style, and you accept it longer. That's why World of Warcraft, though yes, some will argue that its graphics look dated, it still holds true 7 years later, is because it's grounded in a very artistic kind of style, not trying to be this latest and greatest immersive real world experience.
Yeah,
and it also keeps it accessible to the people who can't afford high-end gaming PCs.
Exactly, that's a big factor. Yeah, and people can say that about World of Warcraft, but damn, you look at the Pandaria environments and they look amazing compared to Vanilla WoW. So it's come a long way with one single engine.
Mike, I was wondering what you thought of. I know that they said a few times in that interview that a lot of their inspiration for their art style comes from animation, like anime and different art styles like that. So I was wondering if you caught that when you were looking at these creatures.
For me, it's tough. I don't feel it. I think it's there. I think the influence is there. You've got bunny girls, and you can kind of tell it in the very over exaggerated hourglass shape to even the males. I think it's there. For me, anime. And I know this is only one side, which is why I don't necessarily think that it's not there, but I associate anime with very big, over-the-top, amazing action sequences. Unrealistic, back-breaking kind of moves, and just making it just look insane, but being fluid. I think that the combats... It's not that I'm ragging on the combat, saying that it's not this over-the-top amazing action, but I don't think it hits that level of action. But where you have robots coming out of the ground and shooting lasers at you from 40 feet away or whatever, that it's Iron Giant. So I think there are definitely sprinkles of influence there, but I don't think it's not Scarlet Blade, where it's like
Right.
nerds who have boners for anime wanting to play specifically for that.
He said boners.
Could have gotten a lot worse.
Side note, because it's E3 and I'm excited about stuff. Did you notice that part when Destiny, when they went to that one Carter, and he's like, it's getting kind of dark. I got to take out my ghost. And he took out this probe and it was like pitch black. I was like, it's completely dark.
I think my video glitched out when he said it's getting kind of dark because he took this thing out and then I thought it was supposed to brighten the room up, but it didn't do anything.
It didn't
from what
until,
I saw. I think my video glitched out.
I think what it was like some sort of like robotic probe thing, and it was pitch black, and they didn't know where to go. And this thing went off into it, and I think it did something, and then worked on. I don't know how they got the lights on, but then the lights came on, but it was pitch black. Anyway, sidetrack. All right, finally, I had this to say. He said, "I like to have the team use recognizable archetypes and make sure they aren't referencing anything too specific. So you probably aren't going to find an X-wing, Malcolm Reynolds, or a Green Tooth anywhere in our game. Sorry, folks. I know it's a popular thing to do nowadays, but I'd rather make WildStar its own thing and have people reference our game instead. Like I said, there's probably some stuff snuck in there. It's almost impossible to police every minute detail, so don't call me out if you find a thing or two." Where do you guys stand on the pop culture references? Are you guys fans of seeing it in games? You know, World of Warcraft with the dances, and you know there's tons of it in there, and then you got arrow to the knee, and like, you know, where do you guys? I don't know. You like it?
I'm going to channel my
it?
inner Josh for a second here. Is Josh, I know, made a really good point. It's like it's great to see these pop cultural references. It's cute and it's funny, but then when media and everything and the game just takes it to that next level of being oversaturated, that's when it kind of just it leaves, you know, like just awful feeling in the back of your head.
That's because you're in the 1%. That's because you're the hipster. Like this is the hipster.
Not even being the hipster though. Like Arrow to a knee went beyond. No, Arrow to a knee went way too far.
No, everyone watching this show to some extent is the hipster. You may be nerdy and nerds, but like, I'm sorry, you are the hipsters. You're like the punk rockers of like WildStar. Like, it will be like cool for a second. When anybody else that starts liking it, you will hate it. That is just the way it is. Like, this is the hipster crowd. I get it. That's what we do, right? Do you agree with me, Farhan? I see your head. You had a bob in your head. Like,
I like pop culture references when they're subtle, and WoW went from having a little bit of subtle with like a little bit over top to Harrison Ford and like the whole that he got a zone, and at that point I was just completely turned off from it. I think that WildStar definitely, I'm very grateful that they aren't going over the top with the pop culture references.
You know what? With their trailers and what we've seen out of their personality, they don't need it.
Yeah.
Like,
No.
they don't even need to tap into it because their characters and their writing is awesome. Like, and I don't the level of humor that they're putting into, and hopefully that really extends throughout the entire game, like with what we've seen with their trailers especially. I hope that goes the whole way, because if they can keep up that level of personality and humor, like they don't need to tap into anything, because there's just so many funny moments. We saw this on Reddit, had to bring it up. What do you think of the music? Let me play some of this on SoundCloud. You guys heard this?
I have not.
I've only heard a little bit of it. I didn't get a chance to check out the SoundCloud.
It's not playing. Wow, what a buzzkill.
Man, listen to damn beats.
Well, here, we'll put a link below in the show. If you guys haven't checked it out, the lead composer, Jeff Kurtenacker, has put a bunch of tracks from WildStar up on SoundCloud for you guys to all check out. So we will put a link below in this show to that, so you guys can listen to that at another date. And my co-hosts suck because they didn't even read the notes and go listen to it. So they can't even comment on it.
I'm listening to it. It works for me on my end. I'll just listen to it on my own. You can just imagine listening to it.
I've lost all
Right now it's
audio
just
at this
drums.
point. I've lost all audio. That's the problem. I've lost all my audio. So I have no audio. I have no outro music. So Mr. Mike Shaffnet, follow him on the Twitter at Mike Shaffnet. It's just like it's spelt. And of course, watch After Dark right here on Gamebreaker TV. Usually every Tuesday. Tonight it's going to be tonight, but Tuesdays at 9 PST is the normal time. Make sure to follow Mike.
Taking that half-hour block. Oh wait, you can't hear me, so I probably shouldn't talk.
No, we can hear you. It's just music. No, we're fine.
Oh,
you can hear you. Just music. So we're
taking that half-hour back because we were held back by Josh's rating schedule. So now 9 o'clock. We're back to our original time.
Back to 9 o'clock. Farhan Siddiqui, I'm not going to bring up your lower third and confuse people with the Twitter account that I have wrong again, but what is it for everyone?
At Unindel. UNINDEL.
UNINDEL. You can follow me at Gary Gann and follow Gamebreaker TV at Gamebreaker TV. And check out our brand new site, freetoplay.tv. And we've got a new contest going. You guys should check that out. Go to facebook.com/GameBreakerTV and sign up for the new. We're giving away a Razer Naga and 5 Gamebreaker t-shirts, the runners up. You got to go over to facebook.com/GameBreakerTV to sign up. But get in there and enter. It's really super easy to enter. It's kind of fun, too. We're doing a screenshot contest. So any game, doesn't matter what game you're in, upload your favorite screenshot that you have from any game you want. And then all of our fans on the Facebook page, they vote on it. You can go back every day and vote. So yes, you can rally your friends around it, whatever you want to do, but they vote, they pick the winners. One winner will win a Razer Naga, and 5 runners-up will win Gamebreaker TV t-shirts. All right, gang. Keep an eye out. Watch all of our E3 content coming in the next few days, and we'll be back next Monday at our normal time of 1 PST for Unicorn Duck Shadow effin' Puppet.
I see it. It's his hand. It's a unicorn duck shadow puppet.
Do you see it now? Do you see it? You just got it, huh? Nice.